All right. So this is my first time hosting the show. We are without Jordan because he is on paternity leave with his freshly born baby. Freshly. I don't know if
Freshly
that's a thing
born
people
baby
say.
girl.
But everyone is happy and healthy and doing well. And so Lynn and I are going to be doing the recap episode today. And please forgive me if I sound a little different. I am recovering from a cold in the middle of summer in Texas. So, of course, it's very hot and I can't breathe.
And it will last
uh,
forever because that's
it
how
will
they
last
work.
forever. Yes.
Yeah.
I wish I could say it was allergies. So, Lynn, wow, big episode. It's our
Yes.
10th episode.
Big number, double digits. Loved the
Um,
episode.
so good. So good. And as always, we've worked with Dan on a few different
Yeah.
things, and he's so great. So I just wanted to, today it'll be a slightly different format without Jordan, of course. But there were a few things that stuck out to me in the episode, and I
Mm-hmm.
think, I just wanted to talk about our reactions, like what
Yeah.
was said that was like, and this is actually kind of a perfect episode to not have Jordan around because there was so much
There really
moment.
was.
I know, and it's a hard episode, and it's real and it's good. It's really good. And it's something I think everyone should learn about. And it's something that's really important. And, you know,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Right. And so one of the things you guys end up talking about, um, really funny. I am going to keep this in. Jordan just pinged me about possibly doing the post show on Monday. And I don't know why he thinks that would work because we posted today. Um,
Jordan found a time machine.
Hold on. I have to let him know we're doing this right now. That is so
Jordan, we're
funny.
currently in the middle of recording it, and now you're a part of it. And there he goes.
Jordan is officially in the post show. There we go. So you all are talking about death and how it's a normal thing for people in the past, or like that
Right.
it was experienced more easily.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so fascinating to me, thinking about that and how the thing that stuck out with me,
Mm-hmm.
or the thing that stuck out the most to me was, it's not necessarily that they weren't impacted by it, right? It's that they had different coping mechanisms.
Right.
And one of the things that I believe Dan said was,
Mm-hmm.
distancing yourself from your baby
Right.
by calling it little stranger
Right.
because you weren't sure if it was going to survive. And it was just a very sad and scary thing to think
Mm-hmm.
about. And you know, man, especially like we're literally talking about Jordan and
Right.
our other, the other co-host Isaac has a 4-month-year-old or 5-month-year-old. And can you imagine people calling their children little stranger? I mean, that's gut
Right. And it's
wrenching.
probably because they've already lost several children. And I think the thing that got me first was that years ago, I realized that they would, they would have children. The child will die maybe a year old, and then have a child 5 years later, and they would reuse the name. That's what I didn't know. The little stranger, that was baffling to me too. But when I realized they were recycling names, that baffled me too, because it just it just felt strange to,
Yeah,
you had a child with
unbelievable.
that name and now you're reusing the name. And yeah, that still kind of sticks with me. And the
I
little strangers even worse, honestly.
Yeah, the idea that you have to not name your
Mhm.
that's like people who live on farms are told not to name their the animals around them because
Absolutely.
eventually something nature takes its course, or that's being raised for food.
Right.
um and but what's funny is the one caveat I will say to the same name is apparently that wasn't the only reason they used that, because they would name people the same thing all the time.
Oh yes,
uh
I don't know how genealogists do it. As a historian, it's so frustrating and annoying. It's like, can you
yeah,
please be original? Now everyone
yeah,
has an original name. No one has like just a normal. Everyone being born now has, these wild spellings and names, and at least
Yes.
historians.
Marijuana, Pepsi,
Right.
Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper,
Exactly.
Butterfinger. Um, and then they get sponsorship deals by these
Exactly,
large
yeah.
brands, which is
They have
crazy.
to wear, like, the bumper stickers on themselves. Yeah.
So yeah, I just to wrap that last thought up, as we tangent, of course, it's just it's good to humanize the people of the past, and
Right.
by us acknowledging the fact that death is a just because it was more regular doesn't mean that it didn't impact them, and it's cold and callous of us to perceive it as such. They
Right.
were still people, and you know to not have that context to assume that that wasn't the case, I think is a little unfair.
Yeah, I agree. I think they actually had a better relationship with death and sort of the circle of life than we do, because to them it was present and it was a normal part of life.
Right.
Everyone goes through it, whereas we kind of hide it away. We don't talk about it. You hide people away in the hospitals, whereas you
Hmm.
didn't, many times they were dying at home. And then you would have to, if it's winter, the ground is frozen. You would have to put them literally on ice until the ground thawed so that you could bury them. I mean, this is just a present part of life. And if, you, of course, you don't want to lose children and you'll be absolutely devastated, but you also know that it's a fact of life and that you're preparing yourself to handle it in
Right.
a way. It's preparation for the heartache that's going to come.
Of course. And acceptance isn't ignorance, right? And like that's
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Because if everybody fell apart when they lost a child, there would be no everyone would just be a mess. It's like they had to find a
Yes.
way to go on, as difficult as it was.
Yes, absolutely. So
Um,
was there anything from the episode that really stuck out to you?
yeah, I think it was, I mean, it's similar, but it's how we gloss over violence in
Mm.
history. And I mean, I always I've read books on war, and it's definitely that just glosses right over it. And it's not my biggest interest, but I think it was Isaac who, his example was, oh, so, you'll read about so and so taking a wife, and your picture is, oh, well, he's like, hey, let's get married, and it was sort of a consensual thing, but you're not really thinking about like the violence and the non-consensual nature of what's going on behind that. It makes it sound so sanitized,
Right.
and talking about oh, so and so was murdered. Okay, well, that just seems, that's like a generic statistic. But if you say, the bullet struck them in the head and then, their brain splattered out and I had brain matter on me, all of a sudden you're picturing this person, you're picturing what happened to them, and they become an individual, and it's traumatic because you can imagine someone in that situation.
Yeah.
And that's real. That's someone who, had a family, who had friends, who made a life for themselves,
Right.
and they're leaving a hole in the lives of others. But for us it's
Absolutely.
just, oh, they were murdered, let's move on, they're not in the story anymore, remove that character.
Yeah. And scene.
Yeah, exactly,
Um
yeah, yeah,
and
you're out, last scene,
you're
go.
you're totally correct because it makes me think of, battle scenes and how we
Mhm.
talk about, the number of soldiers lost. But like you said, every single one of them had a family,
Right.
they had friends, they had someone that lost someone. And it's, again, a disservice to the humanity that used to be. When we talk about,
Right.
wars and just as numbers.
Right, and it
Um
also takes away the empathy that we naturally have, and I think
yes.
that's part of it, because when you're talking about an enemy and, war and murder, you don't want your people to have empathy in that
Yeah.
way. But with history, that is what we want. Um,
Absolutely.
that's what makes you understand that we're all human and we all experience things.
Right.
Maybe not the same, but we are coming from similar biological places. We're all from the
Yeah.
earth, right? So we have
Yes.
that in common.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy. And it's that kind of leads me down, kind of my last reaction, um, which is, you know, as we go down. this path of war
Mhm.
and trauma and PTSD, right? Like let's tie it back to the main
Right.
thing of the episode, which is the PTSD,
Right.
is realizing that people um didn't even have language back then to
Right.
describe what they're going or like, what's going on with them.
Mhm.
Um and the isolation and sadness that that brings me to is like um it's 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 wild,
Mhm.
and like, some of the examples being, people were mentioned to have just been staring, or that someone went back to the battlefield and started swinging their sword in
Mm.
a reactionary way.
Right.
Part of me, that's very similar to some of the things that was, happening, but those are happening today,
Oh,
right?
absolutely, and can you imagine the fear of what's going on with me? Am I the only one? And you probably don't want to ask other people because you don't wanna be the only one, but you also don't wanna look crazy.
Right.
So everyone's experiencing it, but nobody wants to say they are because they don't want others to judge them, and
Right.
it's just
And
this fear.
yeah, and I think I would imagine that the conditions were different, right? Or the
Right.
idea, their perceptions were different. So like
Absolutely.
if you have someone in your family who's drinking aggressively because they're, trying to numb the pain from war,
Mhm.
how does that look back then versus now? And I think there's probably a lot of similarities, but
Right.
also, there again, there was just no, there wasn't, a veterans association, there wasn't
Right.
a mental
No
health
one
clinic.
advocating for them. Yes.
No,
It could be
definitely
seen as
not.
a moral failing as opposed to now we understand it's a coping mechanism.
Right.
And
Yeah.
when you don't have a word for something, it's really hard to describe that thing and it's really hard to understand it. But I think, it's even if you have a physical illness, you feel better when you can name it, you know what it is, and you know what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But when you don't know, there's no word for it and there's no understanding or means of treating it. It's just, it's scary and it feels like, this isn't going to get better.
Yeah. No, it's crazy to think about just the differences. And I'm really curious, what the people 100 years, 200 years from
Mhm.
now are going to be talking about in regards to us, and like what
Right.
we didn't do, or where that, or how we had progressed.
Mhm.
Um, and not to go too far off the path, but it then kind of, realizing that those writings and those moments happened during like the Revolutionary War, or the
Mhm.
French and Indian War, or, that you have to internalize that for every war that's ever happened all
Absolutely.
the way back.
Mhm.
And that's a lot. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of trauma. That's a lot of sadness.
Mhm.
And, I don't think it's anything we need to scrub away or remove from the
Not at
board.
all.
um, but just acknowledge it. And these things are hard. And
Right.
I think, it might actually make, I, I don't want to say propaganda, but to a certain degree, the propaganda of war, or the glorification of war,
Mhm.
a little less hard to accept.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and
Because, everyone wants to be a hero. Maybe not everyone, but you go into war, you want to do something really good. You want to be a hero. Um, but most of the time when you talk to people who've been in it, they say as soon as they were in their first battle or saw their first, that all melted away and they realized you know, this is violent murder that I'm
it's real.
seeing. It's
Yeah.
real. Right. And I think it's important for us who study these people to appreciate that and to honor it. And not to sort of be on the glorification side,
Right.
but to understand to the best of our abilities, what they go through. And maybe just to realize how resilient people have always been going all the way back, whether it's wars or, families losing children or having, death ever present, that it's all, it's really about resilience and, why we're here today, I guess.
Right. Right. And yeah, and we can appreciate it, and we can appreciate the pain and suffering, and acknowledge it, and remember it, because that's really, you know, all we can do. Right.
Right. And that, we are dealing with, crazy stuff today too. And now we just have to try to be resilient like those in the past were. So, hopefully a little bit of motivation.
Yes, absolutely. A little support for ourselves.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Lynn, I think that's, awesome. I think that yeah, without our leader,
I know.
our guiding
Our
force,
fearless leader.
Jordan, uh, if anyone wants to know, he's approximately 5'8" and 5 feet 8 inches tall. He's going to love that, especially without the ability to respond. But anyway, Lynn, as always, it's great to talk to you. I'm super excited about the episode.
Yeah, it's a
Uh,
great one. It really
yeah.
is.
So please go check it out. It's, George Washington, the 7 Years War and PTSD, wherever you get podcasts. Check it out on the Odyssey app. And now we actually have our website up, which is
Yeah.
2c4hpod.com. So go check out
Check that out
everything
too.
and all the stuff there. And we will see you again in 2 weeks.
All right. Thanks, Pat.